Hi everybody, so this video is looking at the fluid mosaic model, and this is a model of the cell membrane, and it's got, as you can see, two parts. So we've got this idea that it's fluid and it's a mosaic, so we need to explain why we use this term when we're describing the model of the cell surface membrane. So first of all, we'll think about why we have the term mosaic. So we already know that the cell surface membrane is made up of phospholipids, which arrange themselves into a bilayer. So we know that it looks like this, and we know that this bilayer is a result of the properties of the phospholipids. So all of the heads are out here because this side will have fluid which is sort of water-based, and then the heads on this layer are also next to the fluid, which is, let's say this is inside, so this is inside the cytoplasm and this is outside the cell. So we've got our phospholipids which have a hydrophilic head, hydrophobic tail. Now you can see that I've left some gaps here, and that's because we have various molecules embedded within the bilayer. So for example, we might have a protein which is a transport protein. So this one here is a channel protein. We've already looked at those in another video. Or we might have a carrier protein. So a carrier protein, as you can see here, the shape of this will change when substances come along and bind, and then they can pass through the membrane like that. Or we might have a protein which is not involved in transport at all, but it is still embedded across the whole membrane. So these three proteins are an example of proteins that we call transmembrane proteins. We can also have proteins which don't span the whole membrane, and they just are embedded into one side or the other, like this one here. All of these, so all four of these, because they're embedded in the membrane, we call them intrinsic or integral proteins, because they're actually in the membrane itself. Now, an important point here is that because this central part of our bilayer, where all the tails are, this is hydrophobic, and the heads are hydrophilic, as we've already said. So that means that any of these proteins that are embedded, so any of these intrinsic proteins, those proteins must have hydrophilic parts which orientate themselves to the outer side of the membrane, and the proteins have hydrophobic parts which orientate themselves into the middle of the membrane. Okay, it's not just straightforward proteins though that we have in the membrane. We also have some carbohydrate attachments. So this is a carbohydrate chain which has been attached, so when the protein is made it can then get modified and carbohydrates can be added. If you've got a protein with a carbohydrate chain attached to it, then we call it a glycoprotein. We can also have carbohydrate chains attached to the phospholipids and adapted in that way, in which case we would then call it a glycolipid. Now these glycolipids and these glycoproteins have got a lot of important functions. So for example, glycoproteins and glycolipids can be receptors, so they can be involved in cell signalling. So for example, they might recognise hormones, so a hormone could come along, if it's the right complementary shape it could attach there, which then could trigger changes within the cell. So it could recognise hormones or neurotransmitters. Sometimes glycolipids and glycoproteins can be involved in endocytosis, and sometimes they are antigens involved in recognising other cells. So they have lots of roles. The proteins that don't have the carbohydrate part, so as we've seen, so we've got transport proteins. We might have proteins which are, maybe this here for example, it could be an enzyme, so it might be involved in some sort of process like respiration which takes place on the cell membranes. You also have proteins which actually attached to the cytoskeleton. So maybe this protein here is actually attached to the cytoskeleton on the inside of the cell, and that can therefore help to determine the shape of the cell. So proteins, glycolipids, glycoproteins, all, as you can see, mixed up within the layer, forming this mosaic kind of pattern. Okay, so it's fluid mosaic model. So the mosaic part we've done. What about the fluid part? Well, first of all, we have to think about why it might be important that membranes are fluid. So the membrane is fluid. It's a bit like the consistency of olive oil. It's not a solid. That's important. Let's just think about why it might be important. So if we take a small section of our phospholipid bilayer, which we've seen many times before, and there's a channel protein. So this channel protein here is going to allow something to pass through it. Remember, they're specific, so maybe in this case it's a transport protein for sodium ions. So sodium ion can pass through there. Now, the important thing here is that the membrane is controlling the movement of the sodium ions. These sodium ions, because they're charged, they're not able to just pass through the membrane anywhere else because of the hydrophobic tails. They have to go through the channel. Now let's contrast that with a situation where we have got a membrane where the phospholipids are not arranged quite as neatly and tightly together. So if we had instead a bilayer that looked a little bit like this, and you can see that there are much bigger gaps here. We've still got our channel protein, which means that sodium ions are still able to move through. But because we've now got big gaps between some of our phospholipids, it means that sodium ions could also go through here, or they could go through here. So this means that in this case here, the membrane on the cell no longer has control over the entry or the exit of substances, because they can just pass through the bilayer anywhere. So this here is an example of what you might see when you have a very fluid membrane, so a membrane that's more fluid than it should be. When we talk about fluidity, it's a bit hard to show it on here, but basically what we mean is that the various phospholipids and the proteins as well, any substances that are in the membrane, they're able to move around. So for example, they kind of jostle around like this, they move around. Okay, so there's going to be all the time going to be lots of movement of the phospholipids sort of around each other. So they go around, move around, everything like this. If it's too fluid, that means that the phospholipids and the proteins and everything, they're moving around so much that you end up with all of these gaps. So the gaps here, they're not fixed. We have those gaps because the membrane here is so fluid that the phospholipids keep moving around lots, and they're moving around too much, and gaps appear. Those gaps might then close up, but another gap will appear next to it. So membrane fluidity is important because if the membrane is too fluid, the cell is going to be too permeable. The membrane is too permeable and the cell doesn't control the substances that go through. But equally, you don't want it to be too rigid. If the cell membrane is too rigid, then that means that the proteins themselves can't move around, and sometimes some of those proteins need to move around because they need to move from one place to another where they might be needed. So the function of the proteins, enzymes within the membrane can be affected negatively, so they can stop working if the membrane is too rigid. So it's kind of like a balance point where the membrane is just the right fluidity. Too fluid, not good. Too rigid, not good. Okay, so fluidity is important. Let's just think about what affects the fluidity of the membrane. So why might a membrane be more or less fluid? Here is our phospholipid. Remember that what we've got here, we've got fatty acids, hydrocarbon tails, and they can form attractions with other hydrocarbon tails, with other fatty acids. So if we have another phospholipid next to this one, they're both, the tails are sort of all nice and parallel, which means that these two phospholipids can be very close to one another. So there's no real gap here between them. However, this phospholipid, sorry, not that one. So all of these phospholipids are arranged so that all of the tails are nice and tightly packed together. However, if you take another example, what we can see here, this is a fatty acid which is unsaturated. It has a double bond in it, and that double bond, remember, in fatty acids and hydrocarbon tails causes a kink. So because of that, the phospholipid next to it isn't going to be able to line up or pack as closely together. So when you have unsaturated fatty acids, this adjacent phospholipid is much further away. Because of that, you haven't got, because of the greater distance, the force of attraction between these two fatty acids is weaker. And if the force of attraction is weaker, that means that it's easier for the phospholipids to move apart and away from each other. Again, an unsaturated fatty acid, which means there's going to be a greater distance between these two fatty acid tails, which means that we have greater fluidity because the force of attraction is weaker, so this one is able to move around more. So the number of fatty acids which have unsaturated tails, if you increase the number of unsaturated fatty acids in your phospholipids, then you will increase the fluidity. Another thing that affects fluidity of membranes is temperature. So obviously the temperature, the external temperature, will change. And again, if you think about your own experience, if you think about when you've got maybe some butter that comes out of the fridge, then it's going to be very hard. And as the temperature increases, that butter is going to start to become more runny, sort of melts a bit. And that's the same thing with our phospholipid membranes. Butter is a lipid, and phospholipids also is a kind of lipid. So as temperature cools down, cell membranes become less fluid. And as the temperature increases, cell membranes become more fluid. Now, because as we've already said, cells want to keep the fluidity of their membrane within sort of a limit. They don't want it too fluid, they don't want it too rigid. So they need to have a way of sort of buffering the effect of temperature so that temperature doesn't affect the fluidity too much. And the way that it does that is by having a molecule embedded into our bilayer. And the molecule looks a bit like this, it's quite small, and it's called cholesterol. So cholesterol, a bit like a phospholipid, it has a hydrophilic part and it has a hydrophobic part, and you'll get lots of cholesterol molecules embedded in between phospholipids. Now, this is very helpful because cholesterol can do two things. If the temperature goes up, the cholesterol helps to the cholesterol interacts with the fatty acids and stops them being able to move around quite as much. So at higher temperatures, cholesterol helps to reduce the fluidity of the membranes. And then conversely, if the temperature drops, if it gets too cold, because the cholesterol is in between these phospholipids, it stops them packing together too tightly and therefore stops the attraction between the fatty acids getting too high, and that stops them stops the membrane getting too rigid. So cholesterol acts as a buffer. In cold temperatures, it stops the membrane becoming too rigid, and at high temperatures, it stops the membranes becoming too fluid. Okay, that's all. Thank you.